This is Rowan Howard, and I will be interviewing Sarah Plumb at her house at number 9 Pine Street in Newport for the oral history project of the Newport Historical Society. The date is January 19th, 1984. Sarah, where were you born?
I was born at 9 Elm Street on Christmas Eve.
Ah, were you? Were your parents born here too?
Yes, the Baca homestead is at 3135 2nd Street. And the Friend homestead is the Michael Moulton house across the street.
Oh, did they grow up in this area too then?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
They're all, we're native Newporters way before the Revolution.
Wow. What did your father do? What was his occupation?
My father worked at the torpedo station. He was in the manufacturing division of torpedoes.
Oh.
I have a little, is that
Go
on
ahead,
or off?
sure, go ahead.
I had a little background on this Christmas Eve birth.
Oh, well, let's hear it.
Emily, my sister, had ordered a baby sister from Santa Claus. With all the pressures of the holidays, the tree to be trimmed. In those days, the tree was never trimmed until the children were snug in their beds. The pre-preparations for the dinner, and the excitement mounting. Lo and behold, the baby arrived at midnight instead of February as planned. My father did the honors with the help of the next-door neighbor, Mrs. Oney. That's Carolyn Oney's mother, who lent her advice. It was never clearly established between those two which day it really was, the 24th or the 25th. But Emily was thrilled beyond words, and so was my brother Carlton. The next morning, however, when she got a good look, she said, "I hope Santa will take her back. She's awful." When I was 3, my father built the house I grew up in at 103 3rd Street. My Uncle George Baca offered him a lot on Washington Street that Mr. Spencer eventually bought. But Father thought it would be too cold in the winter, and besides, the trolley car went right by the front door at 103 3rd Street.
Oh, sure. That's right, yeah.
Okay.
That's lovely, Sarah. Did your mother do anything outside the house, or was she largely housekeeping?
My mother was very deaf and learned lip reading and then taught lip reading at this women's school.
Did she?
She also did genealogical research because since she was deaf, things didn't bother her in her concentration.
Had she always been deaf, or was this?
She was deaf from the day I was born.
Gracious.
Which I have read that phenomena has happened many times.
Ah.
Mm-hmm.
See, and you said something about a brother and a sister.
Mm-hmm. I have a sister, Emily, and a brother, Carlton, who is deceased.
And they were both older than you, so you were the baby.
Mm-hmm.
They spoiled you, Sarah?
Yes, they did. Yes, they really did. I often see spoiled children now, and I think, well, it really isn't the child's fault, because I was very spoiled. But it wasn't my fault. I didn't understand that they gave me everything I opened my mouth and asked for.
Was there, if there had to be any discipline in the family, who handled that? Your mom or your dad? Your mother did. Mm-hmm. Were you...
my father was very gentle.
Yeah. Did he have his one job was torpedo station?
Oh, yes. Then when he came home, he played with us, took us for walks, fishing. We did a lot of fishing.
Off here? Off the
around on the rocks, Elephant Rock and over at Beaver Tail.
Where's Elephant Rock?
Do you know Richard Wheeler? Well, it's his house. It overlooks Second Beach. It's right around Second Beach.
Oh, as you hit Second Beach, that's it?
Well, you'd go to the right.
Yeah.
And now there's a right-of-way to it.
Oh.
It's quite a run.
Were you a good fisherman?
I was. No rods.
No, what?
No rods.
No rods.
No rods and reels in those days. You swung it. You had a sinker, and you swung it in a circle over your head and just let it go like a lasso.
Oh, wow. Well, what did you catch?
Blackfish.
Yeah.
Yes, blackfish.
What fun. What else did you do together to have a good time?
The family, we had a pool table and a piano.
Do you play?
Not anymore.
You did?
When I was, yes, I used to play for the Sunday school at Trinity. Can't think of, I didn't really play as well as Emily. It was a pretty good pool play, though.
You were. Did you invite the other neighborhood kids
Oh,
come
yes.
in and play
Oh,
too?
yes. They came up.
I would think so.
And we were thinking of what did the children do in the neighborhood to play. We had a jump rope.
Yeah.
And I took my jump rope down to the corner of Sycamore and 3rd, where Ida St. Clair used to live. The house is gone now for the bridge. And all the Albros, there were 6, came out, and the Coogans came out. And I often wondered whether I was that popular or whether it was that I had the best rope. But we jumped every night. And then Ida would put us all in her touring car. And we'd go down to Westall's and get ice cream cones.
Yeah.
She'd buy them.
Yeah, I remember Westall's.
Remember?
Best ice cream, yes I do.
Yeah,
Best
Langley's had ice
yeah.
cream, but it wasn't quite as good as Westall's.
That's right. That's right. Big treat.
So she always treated us. We didn't play jump rope. She took us for a ride around the drive, and we picked our favorite house. Low. It would be terrible if anyone took the other person's house.
Oh.
We each had a certain house.
Special?
Yes.
Do you remember what your
Yes,
special?
I do.
What?
The Playhouse was one.
Yeah.
And the other one is now a restaurant. It has yellow and orange tiles. I've forgotten what the restaurant is now. The gatehouse has orange and yellow tiles.
They call it Ocean Cliff now.
Ocean Cliff.
Yes.
And my 3rd one was Rosa Gassa, which is not in existence today. It's gone. Maybe it went in the hurricane. I don't know. Forgotten.
Speaking of still in existence, is your father's house still the one that you lived in when you were a child? Is that still?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Is it still a one-family house?
Yes, it is. The one at 103 3rd Street?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I have a picture of it over there.
Yeah.
And it I think when we sold it, the postmaster here in Newport bought it. Now I don't know who owns it.
Feel nostalgic about
And
it.
one of the houses, the house that my father was born in, is for sale now, down in the corner of Poplar. Is it Poplar and 3rd? The green house, 3135. That's for sale.
He built that too?
No.
That's
He
an
was
old
born
one.
in that. Alexander built. It's in this book right here. 31 and 35 2nd Streets. This gamble roof house with its old ale and nearby shop is known on the Styles map. But the whole group was probably built soon after 1760 and appears on the Blaskowitz map. John Fry owned it in 1770, and in 1781, when the Fry estate was settled, it was purchased by William Douglas. He sold the property to Alexander Barker in 1827, which would be my great-great-grandfather, who sold it to Henry Barker, which is my great-grandfather, in 1848, and it is still known by that name. They have the wrong name on the house.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, I don't know what that... Unless they've gone back, I've forgotten. They may have gone back to Fry, the original builder.
Yeah, that's right.
But it says here it was still known by that name.
Yeah. Gee whiz. Yeah, that's a long time to be around. You must have had a lot of relatives in town, too, then, didn't you?
Lots and lots of relatives. The Friend family was a large family. And I don't know if anybody remembers Dr. Mathis, Howard Mathis. He was my first cousin. His mother and my mother were sisters. And John Friend and there's another. He's a second cousin. His father, Moulton, which is Michael Moulton, that
Yeah.
house. He's a cousin.
Wow. Gracious.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Did any of them live with you? Any
Never.
relatives live with you?
No.
Getting back to you for a minute, where did you go to school? Down here?
Yeah. All of the children in the neighborhood attended the neighborhood schools in those days, which in my case was Callender at the corner of 3rd and Willow. There were quite a few of us. There was Doris Franklin and Anna Groff and Elsie Piltz, Nora Albro, Edna Wallace, Mildred White, John Morgan, Jack Morgan, that's the one that's the Bayer swimmer that swims at Newport Beach every day.
Yes.
Yes. Jimmy and Bobby Whitford, their father had a drugstore. Beth Alger, Fred and Tom Lawton. Fred had something to do with the American Cup races when he was alive. Very important position in that. Winifred Tripp and Betty Colville that lived down here on Washington Street. I have her picture. John Chapman, Edgar Manuel. And Nora and I skipped to school every day, stopping off at Mr. Tripp's grocery store at the corner of 3rd and LaSalle Place. And he let us pick our own candy and leave the 2 cents on the counter. We had Miss Stoddard for kindergarten, Miss Saunders for the 2nd grade, and she was also the principal. If you misbehaved, she put you in the wastebasket. Miss Bessie Champlin taught the 3rd grade, and then we all went to Potter School for the 4th. Miss Wilcox was the teacher. She kept a pointer to swat the boys' legs, and we were all scared to death until we knew her better. Then we realized she was mostly bark and no bite. We returned to Callender for the 5th grade, and we had a wonderful teacher, Miss Ella Sanford. She always wore brown Oxfords from Seabury Shoe Store. The next pair of shoes that Anna Groff and I had were brown Oxfords just like hers. We all attended Potter School for the 6th and 7th grades. We had Miss Phelan for our teacher in the 7th, and we all loved her and tried our very best to do good work. Mrs. Colville, Betty's mother, was on the school committee, and she visited the class and sat in the back seat all afternoon. I was thankful my parents weren't members of that committee. We went to Mumford School for our 8th and 9th grade classes. We felt very grown up to be departmentalized in the 9th grade, not realizing we were probably the only school in Rhode Island to have a 9th grade. I think it was eliminated shortly thereafter, and junior high replaced it. Dr. Carr, Miss Mackey, and Nora Shea guided us in the 9th grade. There we met new friends from the Broadway area who had attended Coxwell School. We stood in awe of Dr. Carr and minded our P's and Q's. Tiptoe Sal was his secretary, but I cannot recall her real name. Who can ever forget Miss Mackey with her gentleness and superior teaching ability? To this day, I can remember struggling with sentence structure. She invited Helen Coffey and myself to her home one afternoon and tied the ribbons on the diplomas. We were thrilled to be singled out. Everyone remembers Nora Shea. She made American history come alive, and for anyone who didn't behave, she made them write the Constitution word for word. In later years, I realized that during her long teaching career, she had taught about everyone in Newport at one time or another, and she remembered each and every one at the age of 85. Betty Colville and Richard Berry were the winners of the coveted medals given to the outstanding students at Mumford that year. That's it.
Yeah.
So if you can use any of that.
Oh, certainly.
I don't know.
Certainly. Sure it is.
I think it was, as I understood it, I was to give things I remembered, and then other people will add to it
and
or
other
take
people
away.
will add to it and
But I
take
think
away.
I have
and
the
whatnot.
teachers. Oh, put it down.
Ralph.
Ralph!
Not allowed? Oh.
Plus, everybody else in the city
Yeah.
arrived at Rogers together,
Yeah.
and so we made friends with everyone then. And our high school friends, stop it, Misty. That's
all
not
right.
on, is it?
Yeah, that's all right.
Our high school friends are the ones that I'm friends with now.
Uh-huh.
I play bridge with the same group that I did when we graduated from high school. when
Do
I
you
came back.
feel, did the feeling of neighborhood that this group, the Point group, took up to Rogers, did that carry over too,
No, it
or
didn't.
not?
No, it didn't. We spread out into, the only one that was, well, Nora didn't go to school. She dropped out for a year or two because she was ill. And the others just had different friends, I guess. Betty and I stayed friends, Betty Colville, for a while. And then she went away.
Yeah, far away. So, Sal, did you go on to college?
Yes.
Yeah.
I went to the University of Rhode Island
Yeah.
and specialized in home economics. In those days, you had a choice of being a teacher or a nurse.
Yeah.
And heaven forbid that I be a nurse.
Oh.
So I was a
you did
teacher.
that. When did you decide to do that? Or how
To
did
what?
you decide to become a teacher?
Well, I really didn't. My
Didn't.
parents decided
They
that was
did.
what I was going to do.
Did they decide it for the other children too?
Well,
Yeah.
no. Yes, Emily went to teachers college in Boston. She had Amelia Earhart for a teacher
Did she?
of English.
Huh.
My brother didn't go to college. He joined the Navy in World War I and lied about his age.
Did he?
And then when he came out, he didn't want to, so I didn't want to do that.
So when you graduated from URI, did you immediately start teaching? Okay. If you want to answer that. Did you immediately start teaching, or did you go to?
No, I didn't. I went to Columbia University
Oh.
and
Graduate?
took some courses towards my master's degree, but I didn't
But you
finish
didn't,
it.
You didn't finish
I
it.
got married.
Oh, okay.
Right. And that's it.
Alrighty. How about, you said something about your parents going to Trinity, or you playing the piano for Sunday school at Trinity. Didn't you?
My mother did, my father did.
Your father didn't. Was she very much involved in the church or not?
She went to the ladies' auxiliary,
Yeah.
and Emily was in the Girls' Friendly Society. And while she was superintendent of the Sunday school, Van Johnson was a member of one of the Sunday school classes.
Oh, our famous
Oh, this
movie.
famous movie actor.
Yes, that's right. And who was the rector?
Mr. Hughes.
Mr. Hughes. Did you think a lot of Mr. Hughes?
We all loved him. The entire congregation. He was very wise rector and always had an exceptional message.
Very thoughtful person then.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
And did he do anything about your mother couldn't hear? Did he?
Oh yes. My mother was deaf, and he had a special wire sent up to an upstairs pew to the left of the pulpit as you went in, so that he could talk almost into it, and she could hear the sermon.
Boy, that is thoughtful. Yes, very much so. Back to the neighborhood. You've talked about who you played with and where you played. How about celebrations of holidays and things like that? Did the neighborhood get together at all?
Not that I know of. No, we didn't. Christmas morning, we'd go around to each other's homes and inspect the loot.
You would? Is there any neighborhood caroling, anything like that?
No, we didn't do anything
Yeah.
like that. Thanksgiving morning, we went up to Ida St. Clair's, who had a vacant lot beside her house, and we'd take nuts and feed the squirrels. The squirrels were not plentiful in those days like they are today. We didn't have any squirrels.
Not so many trees either, maybe, were there?
No, we didn't have as many trees. There were no trees on 3rd Street, and now look at the trees.
Yeah. Um, was there anybody in the neighborhood that played a particularly important part in your life? Anybody that you feel might have had considerable influence over the way you were growing up or thinking? Or
An adult or a child?
Mm-hmm. Either. Anybody that you feel might have been especially important to you, I guess.
Well, maybe Ida St. Clair and Nora Shea, the teacher.
Oh, yeah, right. Was St. Clair a teacher, too?
No, she worked in her father's market. He had first a market down on 2nd Street, then he moved out to Broadway at the corner of Princeton Street in Broadway. She was a great influence. Very good to all of us.
Liked all the children. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. She's alive today. She must be nearing 90. Lives out in Portsmouth.
How about your own family, Sarah? Where did you meet Ralph?
I met him in 1941 at the training station. He came. He was I wish he were here. He was a young officer, and he joined the Navy in June before Pearl Harbor.
Uh-huh.
And if he could only tell you, if he were here, he'd tell you some funny stories about that, because he was strictly a civilian. And Captain Magruder was the captain of the station. And my brother-in-law, Fred Huggins, was the director of athletics over there. And I used to go over there a lot and watch the activities. And I met Ralph, and we were married.
What was he didn't stay in the Navy, though, after the war?
No,
or did he?
I think he was, no. He was in about 5 years.
Okay, what did he do after that?
He was with the Veterans Administration.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. For the rest of his employed life.
Yeah.
He's retired now.
And then you moved back here.
Yeah, when we both retired, I from teaching and he from the Veterans Administration, we moved back here because we owned this property.
Other reasons, because you felt like home too, perhaps? Or?
Oh, yes. We lived in New Jersey for 20 years, and that was home, really. So it was a difficult choice, but our sons were in this area.
Uh-huh.
And so we wanted to be where the family was.
Very nice, yeah. Going back to your sons, when they were born, and I don't really understand this question too much, did anyone help you? Were they born at home? Were they born in the hospital? Or were the neighbors helpful, or what?
Jerry was born in New York City at the Lenox Hill Hospital. And Ralph Jr. was born in Bath, New York at the Bath Memorial Hospital.
Oh, nobody here. That's right. No, of course not. You weren't here.
No.
That's right. So your children really basically didn't grow up here, did they?
Yes, they did.
They did anyway.
Yes, because I came back to Newport when Jerry was a year and a half.
Uh-huh.
And he went to St. Michael's School when he became school age. And then after Ralph and I were married, he came here every summer and stayed with my mother and father because they missed him so.
Yeah, sure.
And Emily. And then Ralph Jr., we lived in New Jersey. Shortly after he was born, we moved there, and we brought him up here every summer. So they both love Newport and consider themselves Newporters. even in spite of the fact that they were born here.
Somewhere else. Well, I think it's more a feeling of being home than it is actually being born.
Ralph Jr. Wants to know and has asked me several times to check if the Point Association still makes those born on the Point certificates, because he needs two. Both of his babies were born on the Point.
That's right, yes.
And he'd love to have two, and I'd like to give him two.
Sure. I'll pass that word along.
Oh, isn't that
yeah,
nice?
That would be very nice.
Yeah.
Did anybody, do you tell them stories, or did you tell them stories about Newport?
Of course we did. Yeah. Of course, ever since they couldn't listen, they've had stories. And of course, Jerry knew my mother and father.
Yeah.
I brought him back to their home on 3rd Street.
Yeah.
And they also knew my Uncle George that lived across the street where my sister lives now.
Yeah.
And they knew my aunt who lived at 26 3rd Street.
So they're very familiar with the whole thing.
Yes.
That's nice. Let me talk about, or rather, would you talk about the neighborhood a little bit, Sal? There must have been a lot of changes here since you were a little girl.
Yes, there have been many changes. In fact, the Point was decadent. The houses were poorly kept, and no pretty gardens and no plantings. And when I came back, I couldn't believe it. In fact, at the whole city, I lost my way. I I had this stone wall down the middle of Thames Street puzzled me. Yeah. I believe they made a couple of openings now. But on the Point, when you think of what they have done to Marsh Street and Poplar, that was really pretty bad. They brought them up to be beautiful.
Yes.
That I think Newport was very lucky.
But when you were a little girl, it wasn't a rundown, tacky place, was it?
No.
Mostly single family
yes,
houses?
It had started to, though. When I look back on it, I didn't go down to Marsh Street. I stayed up this end of the Point. But
and then eventually, gradually, I gather, the houses were turned into rooming houses or apartments. Or
yeah, well, yes, but they did have some rooming houses. They had what they called the Wissahickon. Did you ever hear of the Wissahickon?
No.
Okay. It was down on Bayside Avenue.
Yeah.
And then it was an enormous apartment house or rooming house, Victorian structure with lots of turrets. It was very interesting. I guess it must have been pulled down along with your house maybe at that time. Then there was also a place down on Washington Street when I was very little that had these beautiful wicker chairs with hoods on them. What was that?
Was that the Fano?
The Fano house, right?
Yeah.
That was there.
Yeah.
And so there's been a lot of changes. And on Washington Street, that little beehive house wasn't there when I was little.
No, that was where my copper beech tree was.
Was it?
Yeah. Well, when you came back in, what, 79 from being away in New Jersey, and that's when you saw
I think probably 78.
78.
Yeah, 78. We've been here 5 years.
Yeah.
It'll be 6 years in March.
Yeah.
So
that's when you saw the real sort of dramatic
change. Doris Duke's efforts plus the Restoration Society efforts. It's just a miracle how beautiful Newport is now.
Are you worried about the future of it down here, or do you think it's...
Only if they bring in gambling.
Yeah.
I'm not. Well, I am worried about the way they're developing the waterfront. That's dreadful. If they can control it, each council seems to come in and say their first priority is to control the waterfront, and then as soon as they're installed, up goes another
Yes. Infuriating.
condominium complex.
Well, back to when you were a young girl. Was there any neighborhood volunteer organization, such as, I guess, comparable to the Point Association or whatever?
Oh no. I think they collected during the war, not World War II.
Okay. You were saying your mother.
There were several neighbors that worked for the Red Cross, and they went around with baskets and had things that had been donated, and they would sell them. For instance, you would donate all the old bridge prizes you didn't want, and maybe someone else would want it. And that's what it amounted to, and that money was given to the Red Cross. I can't think of any other volunteer things that were done. There was no community cohesion.
And no community center, were they not? Yeah, I guess they weren't using St. John's Guildhall then, or maybe it wasn't even built.
It was too bad they didn't make Calendar School into a community center.
Yeah,
that would have been
more,
great.
Yeah.
A museum of point pictures and things like that. But they haven't done
They
it.
didn't do it. No. When you were living here, did you ever think that you wanted to get out and move somewhere else?
Oh yes, all young people do, don't they?
Yeah.
Of course, I couldn't wait.
Well, when you were growing up, did you feel the point confining, or did you feel that?
Not at all. I loved it, and of course, in those days, the ships were out there all summer long. It was a very beautiful sight. Every night we'd walk down and see the ships signaling to one another with their little lights. They also polluted the harbor like mad.
Yes. Yeah. But the urge to get out was really just anybody.
Just to go to school and branch out. Everyone had reached the point where she or he wanted to go to school, and then you went where your bread was buttered, I guess, wherever you wanted to go.
Were most of the people in the neighborhood sort of similar economic backgrounds? Or
that didn't seem to make any difference. Where a person lived, or what kind of clothes a person had. If you went to school with that person, and I can think of several that were probably very, very poor.
Yeah.
I didn't mention them in here. I loved them. I didn't even know that they were different. We had no children that looked down on other children.
So it was sort of a happy, there was a definite neighborhood close. Close
Yes,
feeling.
there was. Yes.
Did you feel that same way about the city as a whole, or are you proud of being a Newporter, sort of, or not?
I really did. Even in high school, when we met children from other areas of the city, we all seemed to enter into the spirit of the high school and worked on the dance committees and went to the games and supported the athletic association. And there were some that we knew were different, that took Greek. I think there were two in my class that had Ruth Franklin for Greek, and we kind of looked at them. But still in all, they went to the same parties, and we had a great time.
Were there lots of parties, though?
Yes, we had lots of parties. Every Friday night or Saturday night of our lives, we had a little group. There were 8 boys and 8 girls. And we met in someone's house. And Winifred Tripp, who lived, her father owned that little grocery store, played the piano. She became a teacher up at the high school for years, business teacher. She went to school with Emily. She played, or we played the Victrola,
Oh,
the
sure.
wind-up
the
Victrola.
wind-up, yeah.
And I can name all 8 boys and all 8 girls today. And we were never separated all through high school.
Oh, nice.
Isn't that? I don't know. There's a few left, I guess. Well, we had a wonderful high school year. Wonderful.
Were the parties in people's houses mostly?
Oh yes. Until maybe twice a year, the Wanamatanami Golf Club was new then. And we had a couple of times a year. Dorothy Downing's father was a member, and Annette Bernice's father was a member. And so we had 2 parties a year maybe out there.
Sounds like fun.
Oh, it was. It was great.
Did you, when you were here, did you join any civic organization?
Well, let's see. I don't believe I did.
Well, you're a pretty busy lady.
I was. I really was. I had a little boy, and I had a full-time job, and I really didn't have time. I volunteered at the Swinburne House. Mrs. Wells was the head of the Swinburne House at that time, and anytime she needed help and I was available, I would go up and help her. And I volunteered. Mrs. Harvey was in charge of the feeding of troops, I guess. They had a panel truck, and they took meals places.
Swinburne did?
No. The Red Cross.
Oh, the Red Cross.
The Red
yeah,
Cross.
Yeah.
And I worked on that for a while with her. I don't believe I...
What do you remember about politics when you were growing up?
Not much.
Do you have any remembrance of who you felt might be in charge, who was really running the city, or
No, I
not?
really didn't have anything to do with politics. I knew Henry Wheeler. He was a mayor, and he was a friend of my sister, so I knew him very well. But I really wasn't interested in politics. I was more interested in Girl Scouts.
Were you? Tell me about the Girl Scouts.
Well, we had a great troop, and
Yeah.
it met down in St. John's Guildhall.
Uh-huh.
And Margaret O'Connell and Marguerite Hughes were the leaders.
Uh-huh.
And then Doris Franklin and I were assistant leaders of the Brownie troop. We did that for a long, long time. We loved it.
So wasn't Jessie McLeod in that?
Oh yes,
too?
oh yes.
And,
But she was head of all of that.
Oh, she was.
I
Oh.
think Jessie was. I didn't know her too well because she wasn't with an individual troop.
Uh-huh.
She and Winifred Lyons and Teddy Scott, they kind of ran things.
How about Skipper Knox?
I don't know Skipper Knox. What was her first name?
Catherine. And she married...
Wasn't that her house, or was that one? I have a picture of that, a little snapshot taken from Battery Park before Eccles' house was built, and it shows Anna's house and this house.
And nothing in between?
No.
Oh,
It's interesting.
isn't that interesting?
Just a little snapshot,
Yeah.
but I thought I'd like to see it sometime.
Well, the Girl Scouts were really very active around here, weren't
Oh
they?
yes,
Yeah.
yes they were. Doris Franklin was chosen queen of something, and we all went up to Roger Williams Park, and I took pictures like mad. I don't know where the pictures are today, but I remember took a lot of pictures. But the thing that impressed me, that instead of grass, there were these swaths of forget-me-nots, and it was so beautiful that day up there. It must have been early June. But she was so pretty. She had curls, and she had a crown. She was Beautiful.
You've got some other thoughts there that.
Well, that's
do you?
then other thoughts goes on to World War I and the hurricane.
Oh, well, maybe we might save those for next time, if that's all right with you.
Not much, just this much.
Yeah, beautiful. When you were little, growing up here, was the shopping mostly done in little area shops, or where?
Well, the first area shop was William F. Tripp's on the corner of LaSalle Place and 3rd, and he had a full-fledged market. He had meat in the back, and groceries, and candy, cookies, and those nice big square boxes with the glass tops.
Mm-hmm.
And the candy in the summer was always behind a mosquito netting. And his daughter Maud, who was married to a Newport building inspector, Jim Douglas, kept the books. And you took your little book down every week and matched your book with his book, and then you paid your bill, and then he gave you a box of cookies or some little thing. And then around the corner on 2nd Street, much later, but still when I was young, came Spire's grocery store. They had a store down near Potter School, and they moved up to the point. And that just went out of business about 8 or 10 years ago. But Mrs. Spires ran it with Minnie and Sadie. And Sadie became a teacher at Potter School. Then the next store was Rosie's, which was in Anna Groff's front yard, right across the street from Sergeant's house, which is now Sergeant's house.
Yeah, right.
Anna had the store torn down. There's nothing there. Just they put a car in there now. Well, Rosie had that when I was very little, and she had ice cream cones that were maybe 1.5 inches big, and she put a little spoonful of ice cream, and that was a penny. And you, I remember that one. And then it became various other people until the Martins took over. Joe Martin and I don't know. Well, somebody will straighten me out on that when they hear that, because it wasn't. And that was they didn't have meat or fish or anything, but they did have groceries and newspapers. Then on the next corner, which is also closed up, is Gilson's. Gilson had a little grocery store. I never was in it in my life because I always went to Tripp, which was 2 blocks up.
Gilson sold it to Martin's, didn't he? That one's
That's the one down on Walnut Street, right. See, that's Martin's. Now, what was it? Joe? Well, anyway, the one in Anna's yard that was Rosie's was owned by a couple that had it for years. If Emily was only here, she'd remember, but I don't remember. Someone else will remember. Gilson's had another store. Gilson's was on the corner of Cherry and 3rd, and it's boarded up, and it was for sale all last year. Right. That was Gilson's. Okay. Then I don't know who had the one on Walnut and 3rd that's now Martin's. Those were the neighborhood stores.
And Jaime Katzman on 2nd and Walnut. Right?
Yes, Katzman's, and then St. Clair's was all the way down where the Newport Oil is. That was St. Clair's.
Okay. Sarah, did these stores deliver too? Or?
Tripp's did. He had a horse and wagon. The horse's name was Frank. My father owned half of it. I don't know which end.
And did they had, counting all the stores, you could get whatever you wanted to locally right down here on
Yes,
point.
but really, the big shopping was done at the Marlborough Market in Tisdale's.
Ah.
The Marlborough Market is now a beautiful home, and it has that white archway over the front door, just across from the basin, across from the
Guardians Field?
Is that?
Oh, you mean,
And the basin is where they have the Sunset League.
Oh, you mean the house that Campbell restored?
It could well be.
That has the bonnet over the...
Yes.
Right,
Well, that one was a meat market.
Oh.
That was the Marlborough Market.
Huh.
And that's where my mother would telephone in the morning and get her groceries. Every day, though.
Yeah. Well, how about
But
ice?
the refrigeration, right?
That's right. Did you have ice delivered too?
Oh, yeah. And then, well, I tell you, before the electric refrigerators, we had an elegant ice box. Most people had a drip pan, but ours had a pipe to the outside. So that was really quite a nice thing. Let's see. Tisdale's was down on 10th Street, and they had an Eddie's. Tisdale's and Eddie's were the two other nice stores that had very nice things, and coffee and fresh roasted peanuts.
Oh, beautiful. But
Those are the stores. And I remember, somebody else will remember more than I do.
Yeah, but that's quite a lot of stores for this.
Now see, they're all out of Spies is closed. Gilson's on the corner of 3rd and Cherry's gone. This little store.
Everything gone except Jack Martin.
Well, I don't know why my husband is going down the street with a broom and a dog.
I don't know. This is Rowan Howard. I'm interviewing Sarah Plumb at her house at number 9 Pine Street. This is the January the 27th, 1984. Sarah, today we're going to sort of talk about big events that happened in Newport. So let's start with World War I. You must have been pretty small. How old were you in 1916?
I was 8 years old. I was 8 years old, Rowan.
Okay. So, let's see, 8 years old. What do you remember about it? Anything very much?
Well, I remember some things. On Saturday afternoons, we all went out to the training station to watch the recruits drill. That was a real occasion. Folding chairs were set up on the lawn, and it was a very impressive sight, with their precision marching and their white uniforms and hats shining in the sun. In our classroom, we all learned a song that went plant, 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 and ho, ho, ho for victory. And we were supposed to plant some vegetables in a little garden. I don't think I did. I don't remember any garden. My brother Carlton joined the Navy, and my father, who worked at the torpedo station, used to test the torpedoes off Rose Island. My Uncle Harrison was in the Navy and gave us the pictures of the Newport contingent marching in Washington on Preparedness Day. My hobby is doll collecting. Maybe I told you that, Rowan. Germany and France were the leading producers of dolls at that time. When World War I broke out, that ceased to be, and the Japanese, enterprising as usual, took a German mold and made dolls just like the Germans.
Oh, wow.
The company was called the Mori Brothers. They shipped dolls to the United States for 2 years. It's hard to tell the difference, and I have a doll that is an excellent example of a Japanese Mori doll, dated 1917. They're very hard to come by.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, I would. So you had lots of family involved. Do you remember a great influx of sailors coming into Newport?
I don't remember that. Probably I was too little. The only thing I remember, there were many sailors, and they walked from the training station right by our house on 3rd Street down to the activity downtown. And one morning when I got up, I couldn't find my doll carriage. And my brother found it up where the Cascamba cottages are now. It was a swamp across from the Daisy Field. Now the Daisy Field is where the Naval Hospital annexes are. And across from that was called the Blue Flag Swamp, like iris, wild iris. And there was my doll carriage submerged in the mud of the swamp. So I'm sure the sailors had some fun with that.
Had a good time
and
with
then
it,
one morning, my mother came down and looked out, and in the hammock was a nice young little sailor, sound asleep. That's about all I can think of on that.
Your father would be, of course, he would walk down to the ferry, I guess, to go over to the torpedo station.
My father did. He walked that. He would go over Van Zandt Avenue Bridge and along Long Lane to Farewell Street, and then down Thames to the Government Landing. And couldn't, in spite of the fact that he was born here and his family, he couldn't swim a stroke. He prided himself that he was never late for his work at the torpedo station, but one morning something must have held him up. So he made a jump from the landing to the ferry and missed. And my Uncle George, whose house is diagonally across the street from 9 Pine, jumped in and pulled him out. But he didn't go home.
He went
right on that ferry with wet clothes, and they dressed him up for the day in dry clothes.
For heaven's sake. You said he was testing torpedoes at Rose Island. Did they actually go over to the island? And
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. These there was a Mr. DeLange, Mr. Keith, Mr. Chase, Mr. Moore, and my father. They were the ones that did the testing and made sure that they would be able to be aimed right at those Germans.
Oh, good. Good. Were there a lot of people here that worked a lot of your neighbors that worked at the torpedo station?
Well, let's see about my neighbors. On the north side was a Navy man. Across the street was Mr. Frank Morgan, and he ran the train. He was the engineer on the locomotive. We had a train that went to Boston, Providence.
Oh, from here, yeah.
Yes, okay. And he was the engineer of the train. And all of his sons, there was Frank and Ben, I guess there were just the two of them, because this is a young one. Frank and Ben were participate in this war. They were soldiers. And Ben was a prisoner in Brest, B-R-E-S-T, Brest, wherever that.
Well, it's a port.
There was a battle there, and he was taken prisoner. I think that was it. Frank was over there a couple of years. Muriel, his daughter, lives on 2nd Street now. She might be able to tell you more about
Do you think very many people in the neighborhood changed their jobs because of the war, or were they busy here anyway?
I don't think, I really don't know. I really don't know.
You were still a pretty little girl.
I really don't remember anything about what other people did much.
Do you remember anything about the Liberty bonds, Sal? Did they?
Oh, we all had Liberty bonds.
Do you remember how they raised money for them, or did they have
They had posters.
rallies? Or,
yes,
yeah.
they did have rallies, and they had posters. Seems to me that Jerry, that lives in Wilbraham, has a World War I poster, and Pierre does too.
Oh, does it?
Yes.
Yeah. And the little, I thought that I remembered Mother saying that one of my sisters was not a poster girl, but she was something or other to do with a rally for raising money for the Liberty bonds. But it was, I guess, a pretty big affair. You were too little to think of Red Cross activities then, I guess. I'm sure you were. Do you have any remembrance of recollection of how the servicemen were welcomed back when the war was over?
No, I don't remember. I remember World War II, but I don't remember anything about World War I. No.
Okay, I know you know about the Fall River Line, Sal, because you said you'd written on it a lot of times.
Yes, we used to, that was one of the things that we did for entertainment. We'd walk down to the dock, where the dock, and we'd watch all the fish being loaded on, and all the mail being loaded on, and then the passengers, and the summer colony would use it, commute. They'd just hop on that boat at 9 at night and be in New York to disembark early in the morning. And it was such a beautiful boat. But whenever we went to New York, we took the, oh yes, we did.
Did you have a favorite?
I think the Providence, that's why I have the little picture, because I remembered that better than any other. And it just seemed as though it would go on forever. It was a terrible blow to all of us when they dismantled those boats, sold everything.
It was very sudden, too.
My sister bought bunks, and several people bought rugs.
Sure.
I think that Kenneth Stein, young Kenneth, his grandfather worked for the old Fall River Line. I don't think it was called that though.
It was the New England Steamship.
Right.
Right.
Yes, it was. And they had rugs. And when they took everything out of the house at 76 3rd Street, he took the rugs that went up the stairs. And they are from one of those ships. Not very pretty.
What was it like going down at night? Was it beautiful going out of the harbor?
It was lovely.
And how long did your father let you stay up? Or
well, the big thing in my mind was having dinner on that boat with all the candles and the silver and all the service and the excitement. And we were allowed to go any place we wanted to on the boat. And my sister would take me in tow, Emily, and walk me all over the boat, and I just loved it. And everyone was in a festive mood and would speak to us and be very nice. I just loved them. And I could never get to sleep. I was too excited. They had little tiny wash basins, and that intrigued me. I don't know if anybody got any of those or not.
I don't know.
I'm sure that some of the banisters in people's houses must be there, the wide flat ones that were on the ships.
They were beautiful.
So these ran all year round, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and
Did you ever come up? Did you do it the other way from New York up?
yes, I did. I had a very sad experience. My baby, this was after I was married, my baby was born in June, and I just couldn't wait to get home to show all my friends and my mother and father this beautiful baby boy. So the plans were laid, and I hopped on the boat in New York. And I was to get off the boat. I don't know what time it would be, 9, I guess. And I didn't get off. My father was down there and to take me home, and he was so upset, and they called and didn't get off. So they were sure I wasn't on the boat. So I woke up in Fall River, baby and all. I was so exhausted that I guess all the banging in the world. I did not wake up. My father vowed, he went home furious and vowed that he would never go up to Fall River, and of course he was right there when the boat docked. But that was an awful experience. Get down there.
Did you know anybody who worked on the line?
No, I didn't.
There were some people around here, I gather, in the neighborhood.
Really, I didn't know anyone.
Sarah, how about the other people that the boat brought in, the tourists that they
I don't
came in
remember
on the
them.
boat?
I don't
Anything
remember.
about 'em?
One of the big things, I remember the Eastern sausage truck would always drive up and unload all this good sausage from New York.
Uh-huh. Isn't that interesting?
The fish and the sausage, but I don't remember tourists from New York coming here. I had 2 aunts that would come up that were at Rutgers Preparatory School. There was a Mr. and Mrs. Kelly who are native Newporters, or she was. She was Aunt Lillian.
No, well.
You know, one of those people. And he was the headmaster at Rutgers Preparatory School. And my Aunt Eliza, who used to run a boarding house called the Pelham House on, I think, Pelham Street, where now Mrs. Niles has her antique store. And Aunt Sarah Reed, who was Mrs. Kelly's sister, would come up every Christmas for 2 weeks on that boat, and that was exciting because we were going to get somebody to come in on the boat. And then
It was fun to watch it land the dock
and have someone that you knew.
Yes.
And then they came up for a month in the summer.
So there really wasn't a big influx of, not
Oh,
the way
no.
it is when they
Oh,
come
no.
pouring
No,
down the road.
nothing like today.
How about the Depression? So, were you here then?
Well, as I said, I graduated from high school in 1927. The stock market crash was 29. I went right along to college. Really, the torpedo station and the training station and the regular businesses that would take care of the people, the grocery stores, department stores, and so forth, just went right along because the people got their salaries, and we didn't have a depression in Newport. We
Wasn't
really
felt down
didn't.
here at all.
There wasn't. I didn't know what a depression was.
I believe at one point the people at the torpedo station took a percentage cut.
I
But
didn't
that-
know
I
about
didn't
that.
know
If
about
they,
that.
if that
Yeah.
happened, this
Uh-huh.
was in World War.
No, this was
Oh, and
during
in the
during
Depression, right?
yeah.
I don't know. No one would. In those days, they didn't have family councils and discuss the father's
That's right.
income and budgeted accordingly. I was not included in that. My father and mother probably knew about that and made the decision.
But you were off in college
Well, I graduated in '31,
yeah.
so the Depression went from 29 to what? 33
well,
to
well,
5.
later than that, really.
Uh-huh.
Sort of
I-
east off here, about 33 or 4.
Mhm. Well, they may have taken a cut for all about me. I don't know.
But you didn't feel it. You said
No,
and
I can remember
people-
hearing stories about teachers in Connecticut taking IOUs and still teaching, but they didn't get any salary. They took IOUs in their envelopes.
And I'm kind of did you get a job right afterward? You got
From
married.
college?
Yeah, you got
I
married.
got married.
And then you went to graduate school. So
Well,
by
I
the
went to I
time-
went to Columbia right
Yeah.
from college,
Uh-huh.
right the following September, but I didn't stay there. I met someone and we got married, and so I didn't get my master's degree at that time, not till years later.
And when you came back here to teach, that was, the Depression was long gone.
I never taught here.
Oh, you didn't?
No,
No.
no.
It'd be kind of fun. You have such fascinating memories, brilliant memories
The
of what it was
teaching
like to
of,
be a student here.
The teachers here, my field was home economics.
Mm-hmm.
And the two teachers that taught in this town were Virginia May, who was in my class, and Ann Drury, she was 2 years behind me. She came from Jamestown. And one taught foods and nutrition, which was Virginia,
Yeah.
and the other clothing, and
Oh.
costume design,
Mm.
whatever it was in those days, I don't know. And they just had no, Gene Keenan taught the 7th and 8th
Yeah.
grades, elementary. And there was no place for me.
I guess not.
So-
Your buddy said, right?
So I went with the WPA. I'd forgotten about that.
Aha, okay.
And I worked for the Works Progress Administration, and I just loved President Roosevelt and Eleanor for providing that job.
Yeah.
I commuted to all the towns and taught nutrition. And then the head of the home economics division of the state died,
Mhm.
and they gave me the job.
Wow.
But, well, I think maybe I might have done a couple of projects, but I didn't hold it a month before Ralph and I got married.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think that's
There was a lot of, when the federal government really got into it, things began to crank along, but I guess Newport had some local projects that helped people during the Depression that were not, people that were not
Probably.
locally,
Probably.
yeah.
Yeah. But see, I couldn't teach French.
Mm-hmm.
I could teach English and science and home economics. And there were no vacancies any place. In those days, the teachers stayed forever and ever. So, there was no. I'm trying to just.
Okay, well, we're still in the 30s here. How about Prohibition? Oh, let's see, I don't have
I was
to make
married.
You were married when Prohibition.
Yes, I was. My brother was out of the Navy then, of course, by that time, and he worked for the government and chased rum runners.
Did he? Was he a federal agent then?
Mm-hmm. And
This is your brother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Carlton,
Okay.
he's dead. He was young, and the way young people today would be going around a racetrack or doing surfing or water skiing, this was a game to him. It was. This is the second time I've gotten married. It was just a lark with him.
Was this in the beginning of the Prohibition era? Or
I
later
guess it
on
was.
there?
Must have been. I don't know.
Well, let's see. It went into effect in the early 20s.
Well, I wasn't married until 1931.
Yeah, so that was near the end of it. So
32.
Repeal came along in 33.
Right. Well,
But, so
I can remember. I lived in New York. That's where Jerry was born, and we went to a speakeasy.
You did down there.
We went and they looked out the door, the little hole, checked you out. We got in, and I was thrilled. Absolutely thrilled.
Was your brother? Was he an agent up here?
In
Yeah.
Rhode Island.
Did he ever tell you any stories?
No,
about chasing
no,
anybody?
he didn't. His father told him not to talk about it, and so we never heard anything. I think my father was so upset that he was even doing it. He was sure he was going to be shot on the spot. So he just told him to just keep still about his activities, which he did.
How do you think most Newporters felt about Prohibition anyway?
Oh, I have no idea.
Do you know of any?
Those things didn't bother me. I didn't drink, and my family didn't drink, and so we really weren't into that at all. We weren't interested in it. I think that's probably why my father was like that. Told him not to talk about it.
He wasn't shot at, was he?
No.
Do you know
Oh,
anything
no,
about
no.
it?
He had no problem, and he got out of it eventually. Whenever his time was over and we would have to go back in it again, he didn't go. He had his own business in Providence.
So you don't really know that there must have been stories in the newspaper here about.
I suppose.
I suppose.
But I lived in New York at the time.
Were you here in the hurricane of '38?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, I was.
Okay, tell me something about that.
Okay. The 1938 hurricane brings back memories to everyone who lived in Newport at the time. I was the home service director of the Newport Electric Corporation and was responsible for the performance of all the electric ranges, refrigerators, and so forth on the island. We had a new electric range that had a timer clock that turned the oven on and off automatically at the set time. It was the most exciting piece of kitchen equipment that I had ever seen. That day my assignment was to demonstrate the miracle oven to a customer near the big pond. We put a whole dinner in the oven, meat, potatoes, vegetables, and dessert, at 1:30 in the afternoon. Then we sat down and had a cup of tea, and I left. The oven was to turn on at 4:30 and off at 6 p.m., just in time for dinner. I left the house and drove home. The wind was blowing down trees left and right. It's a miracle I ever made it. It was quite a journey. The miracle oven never did turn on and off, and the electricity for that poor woman was off for a week. For several days, Bess Tyler, another employee, and I made soup and stew and sandwiches in the company kitchen downtown, which is now a condominium, I think. It's just been made into a condominium.
Yeah.
And serve all of this to the crews who worked day and night to restore current to the customers. As long as the hurricane was to be, I'm glad I experienced it. Mother Nature is awesome.
Very good.
Yeah.
So, your houses were perfectly all right.
Oh, I could tell you, no.
No,
There's a little house at 26 3rd Street, on the corner of Poplar and 3rd.
Uh-huh.
I think Ed Sherman lives in there now. Well, my grandmother and grandfather built that house, and my aunt Fannie Mae lived in it all alone, and the water came up 3rd Street. So my brother-in-law, Fred Huggins, got a boat, and he rowed from Willow Street down to Poplar and called to her and told her, "Get out of the house, Fannie Mae. The water is rising very fast." And she said, "I will never leave my home." And she didn't.
She didn't.
She didn't. The water was up almost, well, it was well above the first floor.
Gee whiz.
Everything got soaked. I think they had to put in a new heating system. Ruined that, because it was in September, so it wasn't cold or anything, but it ruined it. All of that. That was one funny story. And then another one. My father was down on Long Wharf in J.T. O'Connell's, and Fred said, "I'm going down and get him." Well, in the meantime, I had taken Jerry, who was 5, and decided I was going to go and tell him he better get out of there, that the water was rising. So I sat Jerry on a stool, Liggett's drugstore stool, and I walked over to the head of Long Wharf, and this tidal wave just came right up the street. Well, I hopped back into Liggett's, and Fred went down with his water right up to here, pushing against this. And he got to JT's, and he yelled up the stairs, because he used to go there a lot and be with him. And he said, "Henry, are you up there?" And he said, "Yes." And I won't tell you what Fred said. Except he said, "Well, stay there. You're safe." And he left.
Oh.
And my father sat upstairs and looked out the window and watched some little building across the street at the end of Long Wharf go right out into the harbor. I can't remember whether there was a man in it or not. It was so long ago. But anyway, he watched that go.
Very,
Those are the only things that stick in my mind, especially. But everyone in Newport has tales and tales of this.
well, must have been absolutely terrifying to be here and see it coming.
Not really. These houses withstood it, though. I think the Eccles house was here. This house was here. They certainly were built to last. That house was there.
There we go. Let's see. Okay. Sal, let's talk a little bit about World War II. You were here.
Yes, I was here, and it was very exciting for little sleepy Newport to have all these young sailors and Navy officers come and live here. A friend of mine rented the Dr. Sullivan house on Toro Street, I think it was. Either Toro or Bull. And she had young Navy officers board there.
Mm-hmm.
And her daughter married one.
The increase in population must have been, naval population must have been enormous.
Yes, there was a lovely officers club up in the casino building on Bellevue Avenue. And we went up there all the time. We'd go up there almost every night and dance and had a wonderful time. And then they had across the street in what is now, I think, the Elks Home.
No.
What was it?
Well, the Elks is on the corner of Pelham.
Yeah.
Not too far away.
Where did they have that place where they entertained the enlisted men? Was well, we go up there every weekend, Saturday afternoons, and we went loaded with sandwiches, and different people came and played music, and we danced with them and had a nice time. I don't know whether it was the Elks Home though, or which house that was in. The Officers Club was in the casino block, upstairs, over those stores there.
Yeah.
But this one was...
Well, if that was before the shopping plaza, maybe it was somewhere in there, but I don't remember.
I don't think so.
Here.
I don't know. Anyway, all of us went there, and all the school teachers. I remember Miss Ruth Franklin would go up there and help them write letters and she set tables, she did dishes. We did everything to make this a lovely place for them to come. There were pool tables.
Is this the Officers Club or the
No,
enlistment?
the officers didn't come
You
there.
said something the other day about helping deliver food, meals.
Oh, yeah, Mrs. Harvey was in charge of the, it was like today's van, and it had food supplies, and it was ready for any emergency. And if there was anything that needed food, we'd take it to these places. And I used to help her do that. That was a little bit of my volunteer work.
Is the Red Cross very much in evidence?
That was the Red Cross.
That was the Red Cross.
That was the Red Cross,
okay.
right. I've forgotten who was head of the Red Cross, but my volunteer work consisted of being a hostess at the Enlisted Men's Club. My husband did that before he left for overseas. He had me on that list to do that. And that was always fun. They were so young. The sailors were so young. And one of them said, "You're just like my mother." And of course, and he said, "I'm right at the beginning of life and you're near the end." And I was just 30.
Sets you up, doesn't it?
So, I was kind of upset about that.
How about people in your family, Sal? Did the war disrupt other people?
Oh yes, Emily's husband Fred, he was in the army, he went overseas, and my father was called back to the torpedo station, but he had had a stroke, so he couldn't go back. But they were really needing men, and all over the country, wherever you went. Do you remember this? Do you remember that it was all women?
Yes.
Like the ice capades, there were no men skaters. It was
Sure.
all women. It was so dull.
Yeah.
But Newport was just the opposite. We were just loaded with all these
that's
nice
right.
men,
Yes.
and we had a good time. There were lots and lots of girls and lots of men, and it was fun.
Yeah, but it was.
Where were you?
I was in New York City, and I was married and had a small baby then. So none of the volunteer places wanted me because I had a dependent child.
Yeah.
So there wasn't much I could do about it.
No.
How about the rationing system, Sal? How did that work, and did it work well? Yeah,
Oh,
tell me about
I've
these.
kind of forgotten where we got these books. We got them from the Office of the Price Administration, and without the stamps, you were unable to purchase any goods. Do not throw this book away when all of the stamps have been used, or when the time for their use has expired. You may be required to present this book when you apply for subsequent books. Rationing was a vital part of the country's war effort. This book is your government's guarantee of your fair share of goods made scarce by the war, to which the stamps contained herein will be assigned as the need arises. Any attempt to violate the rules is an effort to deny someone his share and will create hardships and discontent. Such action, like treason, helps the enemy.
Wow.
If you
Strong
don't
words.
need it, don't buy it.
Uh-huh.
And everyone had one, and you all had a number, and you had to save up. If you wanted a piece of meat, you saved for 2 or 3 weeks until you could get the piece of meat. And another funny thing was things that were rations were stockings. Or if you saw a line, you got into it, found out what the line was for afterwards.
That's right. Yes. They might have butter at the end.
Right. And I think that it worked.
What are some of the what you had scribbled inside one of these books? How many stamps it took or points? I guess
for 2 cans of peas, it took 18 points, and for 2 jars of grape jelly, it took 8 points, and for tomato sauce, for 2, it took 8 points, and for soup, vegetable soup, 8. Chicken soup, 8. Tomato soup, 6. They must have had a lot of tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
Chicken noodle soup, 8. And mushroom, 10.
Ooh.
And so they would be adding that up.
Do you
The
think
meat was the big thing.
Yeah, and butter. I remember there being no butter.
Well, the butter,
Practically no
I
butter.
have a story about the butter.
Okay.
We loved it, and we try to get butter, and Fred wrote back from wherever he was, Okinawa, on the dock. All the butter was unloaded, and then nobody picked it up, and it all melted on the dock.
Oh.
And he knew how we were wanting butter so badly. And then we had no sugar to make birthday cakes. And my mother had some old candy canes, and we rolled them out and made peppermint frosting on a chocolate cake. Those are the things that made it worthwhile.
Sure.
Yeah. But I saved some candy canes this Christmas, and I thought, it took me back.
Yeah, sure. Do you think the stamps, basically, they worked? Maybe people were not overly deprived. It was sort of...
Oh, no,
Okay,
but it gave everybody a feeling of participating in the war effort and helping. Once, well, I have two almost near tragedies, though. I applied at the office for stamps to take me from Newport to Bainbridge, Maryland, which is where Ralph was going to be stationed, and I got them. Her name was Peckham. Margaret Peckham was in charge of it, and she gave me the stamps, and she listened to my story, gasoline. And Ralph's brother Bob came down from Boston, and he was going to drive me to Maryland, and he could get a train back. But I had Jerry with me. And I guess I was bored in driving in the car, so I cleaned out the compartment and I was throwing things out, literally, on my way. I threw all the stamps out the window. When we got to Boston to meet Ralph, he said, "Where are the stamps?" I said, "They're gone." I threw them away. He said, "Well, I don't know what we're going to do. We have to get this car down to where I'm going to be transferred to where I am, and I don't have any stamps. What are we going to do?" I said, "I don't know, but we'll go back and see Margaret." So we came back to Newport, and I saw her, and I said, "Margaret, I can put my hand on a Bible. You've known me since I was born." I threw the stamps right out the window, and they're in some field in Portsmouth. She said, "Here's more stamps." So she gave me the stamps. Then another time I had a friend of mine come to visit me at Bainbridge from Newport. And I wanted to take her to Hochul Cone in Baltimore, Maryland, and show her this pretty store. And so Ralph wrangled stamps from everybody in his office. "Give Sal a couple of your stamps. She wants to take this dear friend." Everybody, they gave me stamps, and so I had a fistful. We went down, took the car down to get gas. It was Anna Groff. Do you remember Anna Groff?
I don't know.
No.
Spell her name for me, though.
Groff.
Okay.
Anna. She's the one that lived at 76 3rd Street, which is across from where Mrs. Sargent lives now. And I gave the man the stamps, and he put the gasoline in the car. Then he went in, and he came back and he said, "Those stamps you gave me are counterfeit."
Yeah.
And he showed me all these shabby stamps that were all, they weren't the stamps I gave him.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "I didn't give you those stamps. I gave you nice new stamps right from my husband's office." And everybody contributed. And those stamps are not the stamps. And he said, "Well, you better call your husband up and tell him to come down here." I could see us arrested. I could see him thrown out of the Navy. I just was wild. And Ralph went down, and he also took someone else with him that knew about those stamps. And they threatened him. They told him, they said, "We're going to have you arrested."
I don't think so.
And so he shut right up. But those were the two near misses.
Wow. What was he going to do, I suppose?
He wanted us to give
Blackmailing his
him money.
Yeah.
Ralph
Sure,
said
to
he
keep
wanted
him
us to
quiet.
give him money.
Yeah.
Or more, give him more stamps.
Mm.
Go and try to find more stamps. Either stamps or money. He didn't, but he didn't get either one.
Good. Hmm. Oh.
Oh, and then I have the when in Newport, they were very careful of the children, and Jerry was 8, and he was in, I think, in St. Michael's School at the time, and they gave all the children in the city of Newport tags with a number. They were registered in case they had to be evacuated and separated from their parents. They all had a number, and they were to wear that around their necks at all times.
That was
And
very
we all
thoughtful.
had, in those days, you didn't just call up Mr. Fullerton and tell him to make some draperies. You, and we were told we had to have draperies that were lined so that not a single speck of light could show. And so my mother and a couple of my friends came, and I lived on Prospect Avenue in Middletown, and I can see all this material, cretonne material, and a flower, and the lining was dark green. The dark green had to be out, and the flower, of course, was cherry inside. And we had to keep trying it to make sure that when it was dropped, not a crack of light showed. Everybody had that.
Sure. All black.
Do you remember that? Did you have to do that in New York?
Yeah.
And that's another thing I did, was those draperies. I thought my sewing machine wasn't worn out. I don't know of anything else.
And you needed, were you working on, you've got a
No,
badge
no.
here that says Naval Training Station.
Yes, but that was a dependence badge.
Oh,
All
okay.
the
Oh, sure.
dependents of the employees over there that would want to go over had to always wear that button. And even when I went over at night to the enlisted men's club, which was over there on the base somewhere, some barracks, maybe it was Barracks B, I always had to wear that.
So, did they ever do any practice evacuation of the children or anything?
I don't
like that?
remember of any. I don't remember. They may have, but maybe in the school.
Yeah.
I don't know. When he went to St. Michael's, and so I don't really know what they did.
Do you think that the presence of all the Navy here, so much Navy, did the people feel a sense of security because it was all here? They feel maybe they were a prime target.
I don't think we ever felt that we were a target. No, I really don't. We had always been used to the Navy.
Yeah.
And we went to school with Navy boys and girls. I must say that the boys were more popular than the girls.
Yes, I figured.
We had parties, and I can't remember of ever having a Navy girl, but we had every boy we could lay our hands on at our parties. And the Navy girls probably did their own thing with the Newport boys, I don't know. But I don't think we ever felt that we were targets.
Do you have a vivid memory of VE Day?
Yes, I do. We went down to Long Wharf. A parade was formed in no time. And Jerry, I can remember seeing my little Jerry, who was, 8 or 9, on top of the hood of a car, riding back and wildly cheering. I don't think he knew what he was cheering for, but anyway, I was sure he was going to be killed on the spot. But everybody was kissing and hugging, and everyone was very excited. All the sailors were dancing in the streets, and the girls. I had my cousin Marie here from Buffalo, and she just couldn't get over that.
How about VJ Day? Was that even
I
bigger?
don't remember anything
VJ
about
Day?
it. I couldn't have been here.
The very end of the war?
Yeah. I don't believe No, I wasn't here. At the end of the war, we were in Washington. At the naval gun factory.
Sure.
So, I don't remember anything about that. But I do remember the stockings.
Yeah.
in Washington. Trying one of there was we lived in a furnished room. We had 2 furnished rooms, and there were waves that lived there too. And some wave was to get 2 pairs of stockings from her mother in the mail, and she never got her hands on them. Whether they ever came or not, I know. But she was going around. Did you see a package of my stocking?
Well, you remember those awful rayon things that we wore?
Right. Oh, yeah.
And some that disintegrated if the air in New York turned bad or something. They just went to nothing.
I know it. I know. Oh, God.
How about the jazz festivals, Sarah? Do you remember much about them?
We lived, I guess, probably in Bath, New York, when they had the jazz festival, and we came up, of course, in a month in the summer, so we knew about it, and we would ride over there and see the people camping out, and we didn't experience anything. Nobody came and slept in our yard or in Emily's yard, but I know that the Newport people had some very bad experiences from that.
But this neighborhood was pretty much out of the way.
I don't remember a thing. I remember going over there, though, to see it. Not the festival. Excuse me, but
the bad stuff.
all of them sleeping out over there on blankets, and I do remember one bunch going into one of the supermarkets, and they stopped, and each one drank milk there and ate fruit there, but by the time they came to the checkout place, there was no evidence of having had anything, and we watched the whole thing. So no wonder they were upset, the Newport people.
Do you think the police handled it well, or do you think
I don't know.
they've done a better job? Maybe?
I have no idea.
How about the bridge and the ferry? You must have memories of the old ferry too.
Well, you do too.
Yes,
Probably
I
the
do.
same as you do. That we'd miss it by 2 minutes, and we'd sit for an hour, no matter whether it was hail, blow, snow, or heat. It was a blessing when we got the bridge, although it was kind of fun. And we used to take a picnic when Jerry was little. I often took him on the Jamestown ferry with a lunch, and we'd sit there for a couple of trips, just ride back and forth on the ferry, and he loved it. We knew the captain of the ferry, and he would let him toot the whistle. Whenever he saw Jerry, he'd say, "Come on, Jerry, when it's time to toot the whistle," and he'd pull on the cord. So that was exciting for him. And I don't remember anything.
I loved to ride it around the north end, when it came the north end of Goat Island, so you could look back at the point and see all the places you were familiar with. Well, you were pleased with the bridge, then. You're pleased with having the bridge. Do you feel it's changed Newport a lot? The bridge?
I do, don't you?
Yeah,
I feel it has brought a lot more people here. I really... See, I've only been back 5 years. And I came every summer for a month, but that month I wasn't worried about the economics of Newport or its population explosion. I was more interested in getting to the beach or to maybe the tennis or something like that. So I didn't really care.
Were you here when the Navy fleet left? 74? No, you weren't, were you?
No.
But you did see some of the restoration and the redevelopment that's been going on here.
Oh yes, I think Doris Duke has just done a marvelous job.
Did you know any of the workmen or restorers of any of the buildings? Do you think the Point was particularly affected by the redevelopment?
Oh yes, I think the Point, it was life-saving to the Point. It's made it beautiful again, the way it should be.
Do you think there were some people maybe that were hurt by it, that were displaced, or didn't?
That I wouldn't know. Probably, there always are some. Probably. I'm sure the West Broadway area displaced a great many. It was all in the paper the other night about that problem. Where are these people going to do? Where are they going? And some people have come back that were displaced. It said night before last in the paper with that picture of that man living in a tent out at Lawton's Valley.
Yeah.
Said, well, one of them is a man that left and now has come back. I don't know.
Well, I don't know about the...
No.
Got anything to say about the summer colony, Sal? Do you have any
No.
feelings about how they might have affected the city, or...
No, I really don't. I didn't know them, and I never had any contact with them. Some of the families down in the lower part of the city, some of them that had when they were young still have contacts with them. But
Well, how about people who were gardeners for them?
yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
These people still have contacts with them. They would know what I wouldn't know because I never had any contact with them. But I never resented them.
Yeah.
Now that is something that we were talking about that one day, and that Harvey Jensen, that we had our own lives, our own interests, and we had good lives and happy young teenage lives, great. And we'd read about these girls having their coming out parties and the money that was spent. In fact, one time we went and climbed a tree to look,
You did?
to watch them put the lights up on the little trees. But we didn't resent it. That was where they were born, just as the King of England is the King of England. And by the grace of God, we were born a certain religion, a certain place in this society, and it didn't bother us one bit. We just read about it in the paper. We're glad about anything that they did, and they did some nice things in Newport.
They certainly did.
And Annette's father was a lawyer for a great many of them, and he'd tell us things about the families. And we'd listen, but it didn't affect us. We never were jealous.
Yeah.
And today,
yeah.
I'm still not jealous
Yeah, no, I'm not.
of any of it.
That's good.
Which is good.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that, though. From out of town, they just don't understand. Didn't you resent the fact that you couldn't live around the drive? Now, today, I could, if I wanted to. But when I was young, I remember Gertie J.K. Sullivan had the first house of a local Newport person around the drive.
And where was it?
It's beyond the Point. It's a little cottage with lions on the steps. Cement lions, I think. Maybe they're cement tubs, but I think they're lions. Her father, J.K. Sullivan, was a big landowner in Newport. And he bought a lot around there and built a little house and just lived in it. Gertie lived there. Gertie was a real Newport character. Everyone knew her. And that was the talk of the town.
I would think so.
That the Sullivans had a house around the drive.
Have you any idea when this happened, Sal?
When?
Approximately.
Might have been when I was in high school. May have been around then. Maybe Annette would know. Oh, there's a lot of people that would know, that would be older than I am, that would know. And maybe, I think maybe Emily would know, because she was a lot older. She was older than Emily.
Oh, that's lovely.
But it never, no one lived around there until one day I came back here, and all these lovely, lovely houses were being built. Right near the Coast Guard station, there was some, and then as you went around the drive, around that bend, there were these lovely natural shingle homes. Middle class.
Yeah.
Middle class, upper middle class. And I was so pleased to think that finally they felt they could share in this, because they had always been kept out.
Yes,
The Newport
yeah,
people.
that's right.
But now I guess anybody, I don't know. The only objection I have are the two bad houses around there that, in my mind, don't fit. They look like factories. There's two around the drive that look like factories.
And
but that's just my opinion. You know, I think it's the consensus of anyone in Newport that they should never have been allowed to be built. But
This is a continuation of the interview with Sarah Plumb on 27 January 1984. Sarah, what do you remember about the America's Cup?
well, in the 20s, the local people were not as involved with the races as we are today. There were no T-shirts and banners and posters and so forth that we saw around here last summer. We would ride around the Ocean Drive to get a glimpse, but more often than not miss, the yachts. In the summer, I worked at Newport Beach in the restaurant. It was a huge place, seldom very full. Mr. McGowan was the manager of the beach, and my dad was one of the members of the Beach Commission. So that's how I got a job in the summer. My job was to check the trays as they came out of the kitchen to make sure that no extra lobsters came out on the trays, and to stamp the checks with the prices. One day it was very exciting. The cup race banquet was to be held in the dining room. The waiters worked all day, making it beautiful. The tables were covered with white linen, and then the gardeners from the estates came in and draped the tables with ropes of green in scallops on the front. Down the center, the flowers and ferns were laid. There were lots of candles, too. The tables were arranged in a U shape, and Sir Thomas Lipton had the place of honor at the head table. Mr. Harvey, a member of the Beach Commission, came over to my desk and asked me if I would like to have dessert with Sir Thomas. I was thrilled, of course, and it wasn't until the next day I realized I had eaten my very first peach melba. I think that sparked my interest and loyalty to the races.
Yes. Go ahead. Was anybody, his crew there too?
Yes, the crew was there, and of course all the dignitaries of Newport, the mayor and the council, and the chief of police and the chief of the fire department
And
were all
I presume the defender was Vanderbilt or whoever was there too, or don't you know?
I should have looked that up.
Yeah.
I really should have. I haven't had a minute this week, but it would be easily found out exactly who was it. Secretly, something like this summer, we wanted Sir Thomas Lipton to win. He had tried so many times, and he was such a nice person.
Did he talk to you
Oh,
easily?
yes, he did. He
That's
talked
fun.
to everyone.
Isn't that great?
Yes. Oh, yes, it was a great memory of the races for me.
And what a special way to see it.
Yes.
It was. How about the ones today? Do you still go out and watch
Yes,
them
we
come
do.
around?
And this summer we were particularly fortunate. The Otis elevator people had a yacht come from California. And Ralph and I were invited to go on the yacht to see the races. And we had a buffet dinner on the yacht. So that was quite exciting for
Yeah,
me.
sure.
Ralph too.
I think it's exciting.
But I always enjoy that every third summer. It doesn't come too often, and I always have company come, and we go down to the wharves and see as much of the activity as we can, and then we go over to Fort Adams to watch them, sometimes early in the morning to watch them go out, if it's a nice sunny day and we know they're going out. And then we'd come in, we'd go down in the afternoon late when they were coming in, take a couple of sandwiches and a couple of friends and folding chairs and meet a lot of other people there and wang that bell with the clapper when the American defender came in. So it's always been a festive occasion.
A good thing for Newport.
Just wonderful.
And now what?
Well, I think that it's being talked of, at least I've heard people discuss having the tryouts here, which would be nice. And what better place than Narragansett Bay? It's supposed to be the best harbor in the country, to have the tryouts.
It's a beautiful place. I'm very good for that. Sarah, that sort of takes care of, unless you've got some other thoughts on what we were discussing about the Depression and the World War II. Let's go, if you don't mind, can we go back a little bit to something you said earlier on in our first interview, something about a trolley going right by your house. Do you remember?
Yes,
Can you tell
we
me
did
more
have a
about that?
trolley go right up 3rd Street.
Uh-huh.
The trolley ran up and down 3rd Street every half hour. There were 2 dinky little cars dubbed the Tunaville trolley. One left the training station as the other left Washington Square, and they switched to the side just before Van Sant Avenue, in front of the Crowell's home. One driver, Mr. Jones, let each one off at his door and carried all the news up and down the street. He gave fatherly advice to the teenagers, carried bundles, loaned dimes to those who might be without one at the time, especially on rainy days, and scolded us or congratulated us as the occasion demanded. Bill Kirby, the other driver, was young, had his foot on the trolley bell as much as he dared, laughed a lot, and gave all the girls a wink. We were excited when he got married, and we chipped in for a gift.
Do you remember what you gave him? Oh, groceries.
I think it was a basket of groceries.
Well, that sounds like a lovely present for somebody starting out.
A young
Yeah,
couple,
sure,
their kitchen.
Yeah, sure.
And I think it had some gadgets in it, too,
Yeah. And dish towels and that.
probably.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Where did this trolley run?
Just back and forth from Washington Square to the training station,
Oh.
back and forth. And so one would start at Washington Square and one would start at the training station simultaneously.
Yeah.
When they met in front of Crowell's house, just before Van Sant Avenue, one would go over to the side and the other one could go straight along the track.
Oh, I see.
And they'd pass on this double track there. And go trotting right along to the
Yeah.
training station.
Were they open-sided trolleys or
Oh,
closed? or
no,
what?
no. The only time they had opens that I ever was on one in Newport was leaving Washington Square. You could get a transfer from this to the beach trolley.
Yeah.
And you got that in front of the Perry House.
Yeah, on the square.
On the square, right. I used to take it in the summer.
Yeah. Go down to First
Yeah,
Beach.
we'd get on the trolley, and it was open. And as we went down Bath Road, that whole right-hand side where, what hotel is it there now?
Cliff Walk Manor.
The Cliff Walk Manor. That was all white snowballs.
Oh,
And that is a picture in my mind.
Yeah, pretty.
It was so beautiful. Mm-hmm.
Sarah, did most of the kids down here, a lot of them, or most of them go swimming that way? Did
A
they
lot of
trolley
people
up
did. You mean down at the shore?
I
Yeah.
mean at First Beach.
At First
On the
Beach.
trolley.
Not too
Not
many.
too many.
Not too
Did a
many.
lot of them swim in
The
here
children around here did go in the harbor, and people from over on Van Zandt Avenue. The Coffees and the Jurgens, who had a big florist place over on Van Zandt Avenue, would pack their lunch in a wagon, a red wagon, always covered with a nice white tablecloth, and they took their lunch down to the pier on Washington Street and spent the day
Oh.
with all their children.
Now this wagon, is it something the kids pulled? It
Yeah,
wasn't
a regular pull wagon,
pull wagon.
express wagon it was called, an express wagon.
Sure.
And all Jimmy Whitford and Jack Morgan and the Lawton boys who all lived on 3rd Street. They all went to the shore to swim.
I mean here.
That was called the shore.
This was called the shore. The
Yes.
bay is the shore, huh? And
Yes.
the other's the beach.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. We used to, when we went in, we didn't wear sneaks. We wore old rubbers with elastic bands to hold them on because of the rocks.
Yeah.
And then when we got out far enough, we could take the rubbers off and put them on a rock and swim to the end of the pier. And there was a raft.
Yeah. Here. Down here. off Benson.
There was a raft. And there was a lifeguard called Clyde James.
Oh.
And his grandfather had a candy stand down at Battery Park at the left-hand corner. And then on the other side of the path to the water was a bench. And all of the men of the point gathered and sat on that bench every evening and smoked their pipes. And we had band concerts.
Oh, did you?
Oh, yes, there was a big bandstand in the center of the park. And we all took a blanket down and sat there. And then we all left and walked down to Westall's and got our ice cream and came back. And we all had probably 10 cents to spend at Mr. Child's candy stand. And I always wanted to get a big, fat peppermint stick. And my mother would never let me.
No, she wouldn't. Mother. Well, this is that must have been quite a great thing for the neighborhood to have that. To have
The
band
Newport
concert.
Band, municipal band,
Was it?
played
Wow.
for the concerts. It wasn't the Navy. It
Did
was
other
the Newport
people
band.
from other parts of town come
Yes,
down?
they all came. There wasn't any television to watch. So people really supported things like that. And somehow, I don't understand how, but the dogs weren't down there messing that grass up. We played there a lot, and we didn't get into any messes from the dogs the way they're allowed to go today. And we spread our blankets down perfectly secure, that they would be clean. Oh, those band concerts, we maybe had 3 a summer. It was a
Nice.
great occasion.
Yeah, great. That sounds lovely.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on a generation, what about your grandchildren when they play around here? Did they?
We take them to Second Beach.
They're not. They
No.
don't have playmates around in this area.
No, they
correct?
don't.
Yeah.
They don't. My granddaughter got quite friendly when she came to visit with Annette Kramiak's daughter, and they had a lovely time for 2 or 3 summers, but the little Kramiak girl got a boat and then a very close girlfriend, and the boat was only big enough to carry 2, so Emily was left out. So she didn't, that friendship sort of broke away, and then Emily got into high school, and she brought a friend with her for 3 or 4 years. She always brought her best friend so that she had someone to play with. So that made it nice. Jerry Jr. always went with his grandfather. Wherever Grandpa went, Jerry Jr. was right there. And Jeff plays with the neighborhood boys. He'll come, as soon as he comes down, they're all there, here. And they have a ball game down on the beach. And Annette Kramiak's son and Jeff are very good friends.
With all this water around, I suppose the kids all learned how to swim.
Never.
No.
Oh, you mean these
the
young, my
young
children,
ones,
my
yeah.
grandchildren? No, they never went in this water in their lives.
yeah.
Never were allowed to go in because of the pollution.
Yeah.
They learn. They're beautiful swimmers. In fact, both Emily and Jerry were on our high school swimming teams. Emily works out with the swimming team at the University of Massachusetts now. I don't think Jerry does anything anymore with that. But he's a good swimmer. Jeff is on the swimming team at Wilbraham Academy. He swims. They all swim.
How about boats? Did the neighborhood kids have boats, or was it just very few that?
In
Here's
my
Little Rubble,
generation,
yeah.
in my generation, they worked on boats. There was a Fred Lawton that lived across the street from us, Fred and Tom. And Fred worked with the cup boats every summer, and finally was very important in that. I've forgotten what he did, but it would be in the paper each time they had the races that Fred was on the Defender.
Very good.
But my brother never had a boat. My Uncle George always had a boat. I never got on it. I think my father didn't swim, and I think perhaps that's why we didn't ever participate in that. I would like to.
But he did take you to the beach, no?
Oh, he didn't. My
No,
mother
he didn't.
did.
Your mother did. Going back to transportation, did you have a family car? Did you go
Yes, we
touring
did.
around, take trips and all?
Yes. Well, we didn't take trips in those days much. The roads were, I guess, like they are today. But we'd go to Providence or Boston. That'd probably be about as far as we'd go. But my father did get a car. I think, as I look back on it, was either 23 or 24. I can seal it to that time. And it was a Buick. He thought that was the best. And it was a pretty car. It was blue. Inside, anyway. I can remember the car was black, but it had blue upholstery.
Light blue?
No, not
Yeah,
light
black
blue, more
and
like this blue, I think. Maybe it was darker.
Yeah.
But I liked it. It was nice.
Anything else that springs to your mind, Sarah?
I don't know whether I don't know if this part of World War II, if you would want to include this, if not, just erase it. there were memories about Newport at the time. Newport was a beehive of activity during the war. Almost every place else was lacking in men. But with the training station, the torpedo station, and Fort Adams, we had all Newport could entertain on their hours off duty. The officers had a club upstairs in the casino block, and the enlisted men's place was the Elks' Home on Bellevue Avenue. Various organizations volunteered to serve cocoa, punch, and sandwiches every weekend there. Miss Ruth Franklin was there. Miss Ruth Franklin was the dean of women at Rogers High School and always kept her eagle eye on everyone. We played ping pong and danced to records. There were letter writing supplies and always a sympathetic ear to listen to the stories of home. One young boy said to me, "Just think, your life is almost over, and mine is just beginning." I was 28 and had just married a young naval officer. So I was kind of taken aback at that remark. One of my jobs in wartime in Newport was to be a hostess twice a week at the training station in the enlisted men's club. They always had live music, and could they jitterbug. Once in a while, when I had time, I helped Mrs. Harvey, who manned the canteen truck for the Red Cross. We all had ration stamp books that encouraged us to be careful of what and how much we bought. We had stamps for meat, vegetables, butter, shoes, and lots of other items. Gasoline stamps were separate, and we were very careful of them and saved them for an important occasion. Here's that. I found another one of those books.
Oh, you found one with stamps, Sarah. That's, oh, for heaven's sake. This
It says it's
spare and, different colors and
different colors for different things.
things. And what is a spare?
Well, I suppose if they put something out and put it on a list,
Yeah.
and they hadn't had a stamp that said meat,
Right.
then you use it, or maybe you were allowed to use extra ones. I can't remember. But anyway, that was Jerry's
written
book.
out for sugar and coffee. And,
Yeah, right.
and
On the back it says something too that's different from the other two I showed you.
yes. And pictures on them. A cornucopia looks like a fruit and vegetables.
Yeah, don't you think
and
so?
one of wheat.
Yeah, for the bread and the cereal group.
Heaven's sake.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I can't think of anything more to ask you at the moment.
No.
And,
Well,
but
I
I do thank you so much for bearing with me and dredging up all those marvelous
Rowan, I
memories.
hope that it gives a little slant on the picture of Newport in that time. Of course, in 1943, I left Newport for Bainbridge Naval Training Station. My husband had been transferred, and I didn't come back again for 35 years to live.
Yeah.
So that I can't tell you any much. I'd come in the summer for a month every summer, if I could. But when I lived out in St. Louis, I couldn't come.
But you did say that when you came back, you found all your old friends, all your old high school friends
Yes,
anyway, still,
yes,
still here.
a great many of them stayed in Newport.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Very nice. Well, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.